So welcome to another Magnimind event. This is more in panel style, and this is a very unique event where we are. Magnimind Academy is a data science AI school. We have boot camps, and because of the founders more into healthcare related stuff, we are more in medicine and healthcare oriented boot camp. It makes the boot camps more unique in that sense, or the school in that sense. And we do organize a lot of events, over 150 events last 1.5 years. And we increased the number of events after COVID. We made it online. We started include non-California people in our meetup groups. We have 7 groups, over 12,000 members. You can welcome to be a member. We do directly announce in meetup groups our events. And the YouTube channel, I recommend to subscribe. We have very informative and rich content in our YouTube channel, including those programs we have. We have 8 to 10 previous events about AI healthcare. And so this is I hope you join all these events and subscribe to the YouTube channel. And I myself, I'm Murat, Stanford scientist, and I work with a variety of projects. And now I work a lot of projects with Chirag. And we do a lot of AI medicine projects. And I have also a startup called Smart Lens. I'm co-founder there, which we make contact lens for IOP measurement, eye pressure measurement. Yeah, I can let Ryan continue from here.
Sure. I'm Ryan Spittler. I direct the Precision Health and Integrated Diagnostics Center at Stanford, as well as the Canary Center for Cancer Early Detection. We've been working in a lot of different areas, trying to keep people healthy for as long as possible. And we do that through a variety of different ways, using implantables, wearables, data analytics, in vitro diagnostics, and of course, looking at the biomarkers to look at the transition from health to disease. So we have a lot of exciting projects, and I think we crossed paths, Murat and I, and hopefully Chirag too, moving forward. So really happy to participate today. I'll turn it over to Chirag.
Hey, thanks, Ryan. So yes, in fact, Ryan, Murat, and I were all postdocs once and overlapping, at Stanford in the Department of Radiology. So that's how we initially met. I'm a clinical assistant professor in the departments of neurology and radiology at Stanford. My clinical specialty is in neuro-oncology. And as Murat mentioned, we have a lot of collaborative projects in the setting of glioblastoma diagnostics, as well as therapeutics. Both basic and translational research is involved. So it's really my pleasure today to introduce our guest participant, Dr. Lama Al-Aswad. She's a glaucoma specialist and a professor of ophthalmology and population health, and also vice chair for innovation in the Department of Ophthalmology at the NYU Langone School of Medicine. In addition to providing clinical care, she has many research interests in the medical and surgical treatment of glaucoma. She's committed to offering large-scale glaucoma screenings to populations in need in New York City. And most recently, she's launched a tele-ophthalmology screening project with a mobile unit. And she's also working to validate artificial intelligence systems as a tool to prevent blindness. She's received multiple awards, including the Distinguished Service Award from the Department of Ophthalmology at Columbia University in 2019, the Achievement Award from the American Academy of Ophthalmology in 2012, and the Visionary Award for Hospital-Based Screening Programs from the Friends of the Congressional Caucus Foundation, incorporated in 2011. So with that, we'd really like to thank you, Dr. Al-Aswad, for joining us, and look forward to today's conversation.
Thank you for inviting me. This is an amazing group, and I looked at your website. It's impressive, and actually, I personally am going to listen to most of them.
That's exciting. Thanks for the plug. Yeah. So as you mentioned, we do have this archive on YouTube of the past conversations. So we definitely encourage the other participants on to catch up on those as well. So we're really looking forward to today's discussion. So Could you tell us about, your, what got you interested in, that's a very unique position that you have as the, vice chair of innovation in your department, and how that came about, and, kind of some of the, if you could share with us some of the exciting work you're doing at the intersection of clinical ophthalmology and, AI and deep learning, which is of deep interest to the community here today.
Thank you. And so the way I started my career, I'm interested in blindness prevention, and I've sought out a disease that is hard to detect because it's called the silent thief of sight. And so I got interested in screening, not even thinking of technology at that point in 2004, between 2007 to 2014, to screen in New York City for glaucoma. So we screened 8,500 people. We were 25 screen positive for glaucoma, but we found other eye diseases. And then we noticed that 57% of them never saw an eye doctor in their lifetime, regardless of having insurance. This is New York City. This is not rural America. And so my team and I looked at how we can improve access to care and screen multiple diseases at the same time. So the idea of doing tele-ophthalmology mobile unit, go to the patient to screen, literally it's an office equipped with OCTs, fundus photos, and we do real-time tele-ophthalmology. Before COVID, we were doing synchronous consultation with an ophthalmologist or an optometrist. And actually the brunt of the work was the optometrist doing a lot of the initial reading and video conversation with the patient, consultation with the patient. But looking at that, which was amazing, we improved follow-up rate, but not a lot. What we noticed is the cost of the screening. The manpower took 80% of the cost. And, there's a lot of screen positive, but there's screen negative. So the idea of telemedicine, the marriage with AI, and this is where, when I started pivoting into artificial intelligence, understanding it more, because looking at the cost of healthcare right now, you have, right now we barely, it's very expensive. One, second, the population is increasing. The number of doctors is not increasing. And the disease prevalence is increasing because of longevity, how long people live. So, and then we are bombarded by a lot of data. So our cognitive ability is steady, but the amount of data we get all the time, there's a limit to what we can comprehend cognitively. So this is where the idea is, we need to find a way to attach AI to the screening. And so I started working in the field to try to do that. And I've validated one of the studies, and I work on other things. But there comes the challenge. To create an AI, you have to have large data sets, and you have to have diverse data sets. So one of the things we currently are working on is to create a big data center. We bring in data with the data of the institution to create a large data set. We're creating the ontology for it on the back end to be able to easily data mine it and standardize it for that. So, and I did a lot of that at Columbia University. Then I was recruited by NYU, and the only, I loved working at Columbia, but the reason I came to NYU, which is a great institution too, is for the ability to do the innovations and the data center and the AI. The infrastructure here is very great for that. I do have to build the back end of it, so it's not that it's built, but it's great to foster that. In addition, I work on technology for home monitoring. We're building a technology that I can't speak about because of IP right now, but it will be able to evaluate visual function in a nice way that the patient does not feel that they're being evaluated and their visual function is being tested in general. So we're doing a couple of that. And when I looked at, initially started working on telemedicine is great, but that's not the only road, right? So telemedicine is one part of the future. AI is the second part of the future, and then we need to create technology and software for the future, which is home monitoring and all of that. So that's how innovation came up around for me. And then I founded and endowed the Innovation Fellowship. And so now we have an Innovation Fellowship at NYU. I do have to put a plug for Stanford. They had the first Innovation Fellowship in ophthalmology, but it's structured differently than our Innovation Fellowship. We have it has 3 arms. The fellow has to train in 3 arms. They work with the data center. They train in AI as part of it. So they learn on telemedicine technology. They work on AI and big data, and we create a tech transfer. So they work with the institution on transferring from idea to concept to market. So that's how the Innovation Fellowship is structured.
So that's really exciting. I mean, I think if you could maybe share with us kind of your journey, you know, as a clinician and an expert in glaucoma and ophthalmology, starting to pivot towards innovation and interfacing with, you know, AI and deep learning and data scientists. What kind of guidance do you give your incoming innovation fellows as to how they should intersect with data scientists? And then also conversely to our data scientist audience here today, how can they better interact with clinicians and physicians to really move the ball forward when it comes to understanding what all these large databases have as in terms of potential impact for human health?
I think that's a great question. So initially when I started my career, I was focusing on my practice, right? And a lot of us do that. And then when your practice is set up, you start focusing more on what the research that you want to do and where you see yourself growing to. And this is literally what happened to me. I focused on my research. I actually was responsible for the glaucoma fellowship at Columbia. And then I started working more on the research and innovations and all of that. The future is in reality the teams that work together. I don't see physicians working in silos. I don't see the data scientists working in silos. There's no way I could program better than you guys or the people who are data scientists. There's no way I can look at the data the same way you look at the data. So, and I've learned that during my journey, I'm all about teams. I think and collaboration. If you look, everything that I do, there's teams and collaborations in it. Because I'm the first to tell you, I don't know it all. But I'm smart enough to tell you I don't know it all. So I bring the people that know it more and add to me so we can create a great product. So this is what I tell my fellow. You are part of the team. You can lead the team in medicine. There's others that will lead the team in data, others that will lead the team in AI. The collective group is what the product is. Nobody is the main person. There's a main person for certain things, but it's the team that works together to produce the product. So I have my team that actually even moved with me from Columbia because I know that I cannot manage IT the same way like my IT person does. For the data and AI, I work with people who work on data and AI. I work here in the institution in structuring. I have another person that works on structuring the data for us, and we work with them on creating the certain ontology for it. We collaborate with data scientists and the masters in bioinformatics group. It's part of the team. So I see it as a teamwork. Medicine in the past was, the doctor and the buck stops there. I learned a few years ago, not true at all. The doctor, yes, is the captain of the ship and you need them there. This is when it comes to patients, but it's the team that succeeds and the team that gets you to where you want. So I never see it any. It's never one person. It is the team. And so you create the team that works for you and that's strong, that adds to you in general. Because I'm not, data scientists will always be better than me in looking at data. And actually one of the things yesterday we were talking about is how data science look at the data when we were trying to create certain things in the data center. I never think about it that way. Unless we collaborate and talk, it doesn't happen. The product is better when we collaborate. And so this is what I tell my fellow. The fellow is, and I tell a lot of people, when you leave, you build your team. And the team can evolve, and there are core people and there are evolving people according to the need. And even the core can change based on the need.
Yeah, absolutely. I had questions. So I kind of, in the spirit of collaboration, some of the things that you're building that are really exciting in terms of the algorithms, platforms, data, repositories, are some of those, going to be open source, or, I'm sure obviously everything's limited. And do you have, that could be in terms of some of the coding, but then also, can external people access some of that data if they want to help work with you guys? How does that work with your institution?
So yes, so there's a couple of things. Data, some of it are open source, and some of it that you bring in, and some of it that has actually certain criteria and contracts to use. So the way we envision the data center would be based on the data, right? If I bring in a open source data, that's accessible it shouldn't be locked to anybody. But I'm not going to mention the data set because by contract, I brought in a data set that literally I had to list every single person that's going to see the data, work on the data, and what exactly I'm going to do. And if I pivot away from that, or I give access to somebody else, every time I go, I need to do that, I have to go back to them for permission. So in reality, the data center would be based on the data itself. So if I'm bringing data with limitation to access, that limitation will stand. If I'm bringing data with open access, then it is open. If you're going to use data from our institution, then we have to create a contract for you to use it. So I see it's a live document or live data center, depending on the situation and the data and the rules of the data that you brought into that data. Similar to the Medicaid data, if when people look at Medicare data, there are rules to how you can access it and how you can present it, and we have to follow those rules.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have the same thing here. And then also, a lot of times what we have is some investigators, they like to kind of make some of their code available so others can improve. How is that for you guys? Is it similar?
This is something that usually the institution has some say in it, at least here. I don't know if it's the same in Stanford. So that's based on the institution, what we can do and what we cannot do for that, literally.
Great, thank you.
So I will add to something to that. Like data is priceless now, and you generate data with institutions. Institution want to own it. Like you're gonna prepare a model, and that could be a product, and that product may bring millions of dollars, maybe billion dollars. So in that sense, it's very tricky. Like also building model just with your institution won't be enough. And you need a diverse model. You need the patient population from different communities. So like I mean, you're working in innovation. I believe you guys are also thinking about commercializing this innovations. So what do you think about that obstacle? Like, how do you guys plan to handle it if you commercialize?
So in general, if you see, I always call for open, like a data bank. The future is having a data bank that everybody agrees. This is the data bank to train and then validate certain things that will be diverse, that everybody has access to. So I think that's very important to do that. Now, commercialization of all of that, as you know, is going to be dependent, and as you mentioned, is going to be dependent on the institution. There are certain things we would commercialize. There are certain things we are going to do it for patient care in general in the institution as part of the patient care more than for internal use. Similar, we build a vision app, by the way, during COVID. It's on in the App Store and in the Google Store, and that's available for free for everybody. And we're building more towards that. So that's available for free for everybody. So there will be things that will be for free and things that will be proprietary. And that's depending on the situation, as all of us fall into that in all our institutions.
We have a question from the community. So Sahitya is asking, how would you respond to those who oppose the inclusion of AI due to the fear of them taking over jobs of certain medical professionals, like radiologists, for example?
I think the AI will add to us. It will not take away jobs from us. Look at the Industrial Revolution. It created new jobs. Yes, it took certain jobs away. So the factory, workers in factories, you don't need that many workers in factories, but you need people running the machines, right? Look at what IT is now a major division in hospitals. Look at it 20 years ago. You didn't hear about IT, or it was, I'm not saying it wasn't there, but it wasn't a major arm of the hospital. So I think it will add to us, it will not take from us. And in reality, currently today, how many of us practice at the top of our license as physicians? We don't. We do things that are not at the top of our license, that could be done by other individuals, that they would be working at the top of their license, or the AI. I want to see patients who need me. I don't want to see normal patients. I want the AI to screen those out. That would decrease the cost to healthcare in general. So AI, initially there's a cost to starting AI, but over time it will decrease the cost of healthcare. We did a study which is on an AI slow, and it was a fun study. And we looked at 110 images. We wanted to see how accurate it is, and multiple things we looked at it. But one of it is speed of interpretation. And the AI did that, and it's a slow AI because it's early and it's an algorithm. It took 14 minutes, and I think that's too much to read the 110 images, whereas on average, each physician took 2 hours to 3 hours to read the 110 images. So look at the time efficiency that you would do. And honestly, reading an image can be done electronically by somebody else. And that's, and the national health system in England has shown that you can train anybody to read diabetic retinopathy images, and they perform well. They don't have to be physicians. You can train anybody to do that. So the AI is there to add to us, in addition to highlight things. If I'm getting all that data from every direction, and I'm looking at it, not only the images, I'm looking at the pressure, blood pressure, and if we're trying to create precision medicine, there's systemic disease. I don't have the time to look at that. And let's be honest, nobody has the time to look at that. We see certain amount of patients mandated because the margins of profit in healthcare are very low. So you have to see more patients. So you need the added tools to you. You become more proficient, more efficient, and it highlights things that you might miss. And that's the fear of most physicians is, with all that I'm looking at, most probably I'm going to miss something, and it's going to help us. That's how I see it.
Great, thank you so much. There's another question coming from the community. Sri Lakshmi is asking, what is your opinion about the future of the pharmaceutical industry? What would be your advice to a pharmacy graduate to not only survive, but also add value to the growing collaboration of AI and pharma?
I think pharmaceutical industry is changing a lot. Now you can have a robot. I know a hospital in New York City that actually replaced 18 pharmacists with a robot, and now 3 pharmacists supervise the robot. And the robot actually detects errors and corrects and sends the doctor, sorry, you have a contraindication, all of that. And even the kidney, sometimes the kidney clearance. So I know that, and it's a low resource hospital. That's why they got the robot, which is because they couldn't afford all that manpower, right? I think in general, as pharmacists, you want to always look at what will not be replaced. Dispensing medication is something that would be, I'm sorry to say, I apologize, but it's something in the future would be replaced by a robot. You're dispensing medication, you're counting pills. You need to be more of a supervisory position, right? Looking at potential development of drug in the drug industry and using AI or understanding who responds to certain medications more than others. So looking at big data and response to disease based on the whole picture of the patient, not certain organ, like in the eye. Sometimes we prescribe medication and we trial and error. We think it works in that patient, but it's honestly trial and error. Can we look at the bigger picture of their health situation, their genetics, everything, age, and which medication they respond well with? I see pharmacists in the future in that position more than dispensing medication and counting pills. Not that it's not important, it's actually important. We all take medications and you never want to get the wrong medication and you're happy to speak to a pharmacist. But it's going to be few of those managing that, not the amount of numbers similar to workers in factories. And it's going to be the same in medicine. It's not only pharmacists. I think primary care or family practice, and no offense to anybody who's primary care or family practice, might be an issue in the future because you can have AI screen and detect certain things. You want to be the person who's doing surgery, the more subspecialist, that's doing more the looking at everything and making decisions in the future.
Yeah, I think that's great because it kind of really reemphasizes your point about, having the clinicians practice at the top of their practice scope. Because just like you say, for pharmacists, even during the era of COVID-19 now, they've been the ones, the humans right there, that are giving the advice to patients regarding risks and benefits, let's say, of the COVID-19 vaccine. And to your point, if you can get a robot to count the pills and dispense them, then the pharmacist can spend the time on the human connection to advise patients, as you're saying, to help them better understand the intersection between the physician's advice and the medications, and looking out for potential contraindications, or even just giving general advice about side effect profile to look out for, so that you can increase compliance or whatever it may be. And so I think you're right, this is going to really transform and enable all the humans to still stay part of the system, but really practice at the top of their abilities to then engage with the patients at the end of the day and cut through a lot of the tedium, using AI to benefit us from that perspective.
100%. And let's give you another example that's currently happening. Diabetes is an epidemic, right, around the world and in the US. And I think by 2030, it's estimated 1 out of 5 will have diabetes in the US. So that translates to the diabetic retinopathy. Today, what's the percentage of diabetic retinopathy screened in patients who have diabetes? It's less than 30%. If you're lucky, 30 to 40%. So these are people who are at risk. As you know, IDXDR and INOC. IDXDR was the first autonomous AI that was approved by the FDA for diabetic retinopathy, and then INOC. Right now, they are deploying AI in primary care practices. And this year, there is now a reimbursement code for AI read for diabetic retinopathy. So now it's cost effective for hospitals to purchase those devices or lease those devices, and they have different models for payment. And Stanford, by the way, is deploying that in some of their primary care, just FYI. David Myung is part of the group that's working on that. So imagine if you deploy that and have AI there, then you will increase screening. That means you will improve outcomes. You will prevent blindness. So the manpower right now with the current situation, we can't cover it. We can't do it. And it's only going to get worse in the future. So that will aid us more in doing it.
I mean, it is very, sorry, Ryan, you were asking something, maybe you couldn't catch.
It's okay, Moran. Okay. I'll go after you, please.
Okay. So it is an interesting turning point. Like if you say pharmacies, some of them may lose jobs, it seems like. And maybe AI may create new jobs. Is that right? That's
Correct.
what you guys say. And there should be like people should position themselves for future. Do you advise like a doctor or pharmacist to learn data science and AI, or you learn AI scientists to learn some more medicine like we're trying to do by now? So.
I actually supervise and mentor a lot of medical students and residents, and I tell them you need to learn data science and bioinformatics, not to run it or do it, to understand, to be able to collaborate with the scientists. You guys too need to learn a little bit about what we're doing. So it's going to be that we learn a little bit about what you do and you learn a little bit about what we do, but the final product, us working together to improve that, right? Look, when the computers came out, right? There are, how many computers you have in your house, right? Every single member of the family has their own computer because it's what we use very often. That means, and remember those the people that used to do the mathematics and do the calculation and they were replaced by computers. It created other things for us to do when the technology occurred. The agriculture revolution created more jobs. It didn't. So yes, jobs will go away, but new jobs will be formed because of that. So I do tell medical students, any when you're looking at a subspecialty, any subspecialty that can be utilized by AI, you shouldn't go into it. So that's why I think family practice and primary care would be, and this is what we do for screening. Some of them will stay, but not the same amount of numbers that are there. The AI will help them and they will work in conjunction with AI to screen populations and take care of patients as the first line.
So what I actually, sorry, Ryan, I want to add that what I claim when I give AI talks, like AI and data science, it would be like a driving license. And I believe everyone in every field may have to know it. So you don't, like you're a doctor, but AI could be your tool. And you may need to have it. This is what I claim. So, yeah.
I totally agree. Like, look at us right now. I have an IT person and a data person that works with me continuously for me to do what I do, right? When I was in residency or medical school, I didn't even think of would be something that we would do. Right now, we work as a team. So they know some of what I do, and I know some of what they do, and we're good. We can better take care of our patients.
So Ryan, you were asking something?
Oh yeah, I was thinking, because we were talking about screening and also kind of pharmaceuticals, you mentioned at the beginning, some home continuous monitoring. And, one of the things we always struggle with is we have like a snapshot and we're asked to try to use that to kind of figure out what the next steps might be. Whereas if we had, the possibility of continuous monitoring or having at least more time points, we could see, did the drug work the way we're hoping to? Can we adjust the dose? Screening, could we pick it up earlier? But the challenge we have oftentimes, especially even in things we're working on, is how continuous do we really need to be? And so, based on your experience and the data you're collecting, what time points would you like to see, maybe in the treatment context, and then maybe, flip that in terms of screening, like the healthy population? What do you want? What would you like to see as an ophthalmologist, as opposed to just measuring as much as possible, which can be also burdensome?
So I think that's a legitimate question. I think that all depends on the disease and the speed of progression of the disease, right? So let's say macular degeneration. You have to follow that patient, especially when it turns to wet, or if it's going to turn to wet, and you might want to check it once, depending on the situation, once every week from home, or once every month from home. Let's talk about glaucoma. Glaucoma is the silent thief of sight, and it affects the peripheral vision, and then it affects at the end the central vision most of the time. You have a structural and a function test. The function test is doing a peripheral visual field, which you have the patient look in the center and you see dots from everywhere and they press if they see it. The current state of us checking the visual field 2 to 3 times a year compared to doing it more often, and it's been a study showed that it decreases, and more often meaning doing it every week to 2 weeks, showed that you can detect progression in less than a year when you do it more often compared to 2 to 3 years when you do it 2 to 3 times a year. So we know that more monitoring and more detection is better, but it depends on the disease itself. But you miss something that, or as a data science, you might not think about it. And honestly, I didn't think about it until my patients 2 years ago, and I've been in practice for a while, but I figured it out 2 years ago. When a patient of mine said, God, I come to your office, I'm nervous, I'm waiting for you to say the words, your pressure is good and you're stable. I feel powerless because I cannot monitor myself at home. So what we are doing by moving technology to the patient, first of all, empowering the patient. So if they have the disease, they're a partner with us in monitoring the disease, and they understand their disease better. If they don't have the disease, if we have ways to screen them remotely, then we give them the power to improve their access to care to help detect the disease earlier. And I've been in practice all that time. And if that patient didn't tell me that they actually feel powerless, I actually didn't understand it. And so now I look at disease and look at patients, at least in ophthalmology, people who have blood pressure, they have the home, they can check their blood pressure. Diabetic patients can check their blood sugar, but ophthalmic patients don't. There are new devices, but they're not becoming that utilized. Hopefully after COVID, they're being used more, and during COVID, we used more of them ourselves. But I think that's the future, is empowering the patient to take care of themselves. This is one. Second, in ophthalmic patients who have ophthalmic disease that could be blinding, they come to our office if they have macular degeneration every 4 to 6 weeks to get an injection and to be monitored. If they have glaucoma, they have to come 3 to 4 times a year, sometimes between 1 to 4 times a year, depending on the situation. If I had glaucoma and I would have to come to my doctor's office, spend 2 to 3 hours each time I come, I would go blind, because it's that or losing my job, right? The good news is they're older, so hopefully most of them retired, but you see disease earlier. So we need to move some of that to the patient for them to be able to do it at their convenience, according to their time, in the middle of the night, while they're in the airport, in the mall, they can do it. I think we have to get the care out of the office to the patient, and that's not my code. Actually, the past CEO of Kaiser Permanente a couple of years ago published a book saying the patient will see now, and he urged that we have to take care out of the hospital and not even out of the clinic to the patient, to better take care of our patients.
Yeah, thank you. I think like what you say about the ability to bring the technologies into the home of the patient empowers them and gives them that sense of control. And so this next question from the community coming in from Shivani is a follow-up on that, with increased data access, coming in from the patient and then communicated to the physician, for example. How do you believe AI will be used in precision medicine? Since most of the diagnostics require the use of patient's genomic profile, what are some ways scientists will be able to safely store and retrieve the patient's information?
So I think you put criteria for every test, right? So let's say intraocular pressure. So I could put criteria in this patient, that's precision medicine. In this patient, if this pressure, eye pressure goes above this, I need to be informed. But if their pressure in that range, I actually don't need to be informed, because it's the range that I think is safe for the patient. So that's for pressure, let's say. For macular degeneration, which is a vision-threatening disease that you have injections to try to save vision. If the patient is stable and he's not developing wet macular degeneration, don't tell me. I don't need to know. But if they're not stable and detected, I need that AI to review the data and highlight the one that I need to see, because with all that data coming in, there is no way I'm going to review it. You will be data exhausted and data numbed to the point that you will not look at the data because it's so much, you don't even know where to start and where to end. So I need the AI, and this is where the AI will help. And, sometimes it's not, maybe a bot would help depending on the situation. But in AI, if there's images and all of that to show progression, pressure could be done easily without the AI. But that's what we need this technology to help us, is to analyze. We put the criteria based on the patient, and it tells us when it's beyond that criteria. And I think that's where it's going to help us in create better care for the patient and creating precision medicine. In addition to that, it might find associations that we don't know. As a lot of you know from the Google study in 2017, the AI from fundus photos were able to detect age within 2 to 3 years, gender, which none of the ophthalmologists tell you. I can't tell if it's a female or a male. A fundus photo, if you give it to me. The smoking, systolic blood pressure, and the risk factors for cardiovascular disease, similar to the Framingham or better than the Framingham risk calculator. So that's from a fundus photo. The AI was able to do it. Today, as an ophthalmologist, I can't do it. I can tell you they're very young or older, but I can't tell you their age. I can't tell you their gender. I can't tell you their smoking status. I'm suspicious about it, but it was able to do that. So this is where AI is going to help us better take care of our patients.
I think building on this most recent comment you mentioned about how AI can help the clinician extract these features that were otherwise unrecognizable or unlinked to the images. One of the comments came up here from the community saying that there have been cases of AI bias. Wouldn't bringing AI into healthcare be more risky, taking into account that in emergency care, fewer minorities are admitted for the same problems than another race? Another commenter mentioned that, as an aside note, providing equitable access to the underserved populations is a big issue in this empowerment process, enabling patients with their data. I guess one question I had is that there's a lot of talk and data now emerging about some of these, unconscious or implicit biases that we as all humans have, and particularly physicians, when it comes to managing patients in a hospital setting or outpatient setting, whether it's regards to pain management, et cetera, et cetera. Are there any ways that you can think of based on OCT images or, fundus pictures, et cetera, that there would be any room for any kind of bias to creep in that way with regard to some of the biases that we currently think of when we look at patients, maybe based on their ethnicity or something else? Do you see any potential for that? Or do you think that this data set that's going to be used by AI in ophthalmology is resistant or impervious to that?
And this is an amazing question, and I agree with you. And I'm not putting a plug for our paper, but we just published a paper on the ethics of AI in medicine and ophthalmology in Asia Pacific Journal of Ophthalmology. And it was I was supervising a master's students on that in the UK. He wanted to do AI work, but we can't share data, and it was 1 year. So we decided on doing the ethics of AI in medicine and ophthalmology. And all what you said is accurate. And if you look at a lot of the training data sets, it does not have a lot of minorities. And even the normative data for certain devices we use in ophthalmology, I'm not going to mention names of devices. One device says it's only for Caucasians. This data is a Caucasian data. So I totally agree with you. That's why we need a data bank that has a diverse population in it. This is one, diverse disease, diverse population, to be able to build the best AI, or maybe AI for each region. The US AI data that you built on based on its population, the European AI data, the Asian AI data. I think that's what's going to happen. But a diverse training set and a validating set is very important, especially that if you look, and IDXDR did it and few other studies did it, certain images in ophthalmology, if you change the pixelation, just change the pixelation or change a little bit the pigment, the AI would fail. And we know that there's a difference between pigmentation and other things in the fundus between different races. So the currently what we're doing will provide biased AI, but people are trying to work on that and preempt that to make it more diverse, because the training sets, this is what we have, and it's hard to get data, and everybody's holding to their data, as all of us know. Does that answer, hopefully?
Definitely, yeah. Thank you so much. I mean, I think that's really important for us to discuss as well, and just some things we sometimes take for granted. We always know about, the potential recalcitrance of certain, patient populations to even want to participate, let's say, in research in general, writ large, because of potential, past history of, medical profession, et cetera. So I think even when we talk about therapeutic clinical trials, for example, when we try to get more diverse patients into our clinical trials so that we're not doing, randomized phase 3 studies based on a very, large majority of only one type of, patient population, so that we can hopefully, like you say, generalize the results to apply to more people. So, thank you for that. One of the other questions coming in here is regarding the potential, cost savings in healthcare. There's always questions. We know that there are a lot of outlays for many years or decades into the future, and these are all predictions. We don't know until we get to that point how much things are going to save or cost the system. So one comment here is that previously Dr. Al-Aswad said that the AI will reduce the cost of healthcare, but the question is, but wouldn't buying AI machines and the taxes would inflate, at least initially, and nationalization of AI in hospitals would take a few years? How can we justify this? Because it could affect the economy and change people's opinion about AI. So it sounds like this kind of, how do we get this transition point as smooth as possible to know that we are going to have a lot of costs up front, but that really convince the payers and the population that it's going to really result in long-term cost savings?
So two things I would say. First of all, the cost. There's a study, and I can't remember the author, so apologies. And I'm quoting the numbers. I know the price is good, but how many images? So they looked at radiology images and AI. I think it was 200,000 images that the AI was able to read in a day for the cost of $1,000. And that's study done. So imagine 200,000 images. How long would it take, and how many doctors would it take? And how much is the salaries for all those doctors? That was done for $1,000. So this is one question. And I say it from the mobile unit. The cost to run the mobile unit is close to $500,000 a year, and 80% of that is manpower, no question. The second answer is we could learn from IDXDR right now and iNOOC. These are two FDA autonomous AIs approved. First of all, IDXDR took a malpractice on their AI, so to relieve the doctors from the malpractice. This is one. Second, both of them lease the imaging machine to the hospitals. You don't even buy it, you lease it. There's a cost, how many machines you buy. And then because now there's a reimbursement this year for AI aided reading, it's not a cost to the hospital anymore. Yes, there's an initial to pay, the initial getting in, setting it up, all of that. There is a cost to that. But over time, you can get that cost because now you're getting paid from the insurance. And it's, as I remember, it's between $45 to $47 that the Medicare would pay for AI aided read of diabetic retinopathy. So there's an initial cost, but there's cost saving over time. Similar to any investment, you're building a new department in a hospital. There's an initial cost, and then there's what you get from it. I think that's what's going to happen in healthcare. But it's been shown in few studies that there is cost saving to it.
I mean, I like to add to that. Let's say you have a technology at home that can diagnose you certain eye diseases, like smart lens or some other. So you take the image in couple seconds, probably you get the results, and instead you're supposed to take off from your work and you go to the doctor's office and you pay for an appointment, you take off from your work, you lose time and money in the work, depends on the people. There's a lot of other costs if AI or technology is not next to you. So I think we don't know some of the cost benefits of such technologies yet.
True, and I can tell you a story of, if I have a minute, of one of my patients who is impressive, who was 75 years old, and he loves technology. So he uses all technologies. He checks his blood sugar, blood pressure, and he has a few years ago, he had a single lead EKG. This is before the iWatch or anything like that. And one time he missed an appointment and he came back and I said, Mr. So-and-so, you missed your appointment. And he said, I got to the hospital, I had AFib and I was treated. And I said, who diagnosed it? He said, well, I was driving and because he has arrhythmias, that's how he checks his EKG. And I didn't feel good. I stopped on the side of the road and pulled my single lead EKG and it read it that it's abnormal to contact an electrophysiologist. I contacted the electrophysiologist. He's like on the side of the road, who I had to pay $12 for. And he said that I need to go to the nearest hospital because I am in AFib. So I went immediately to the hospital and literally he saved his own life. And that's what we need to do. The patient, empowering the patient to take care of themselves. We will have better results and better outcomes.
Well, I think on that note, you're really talking about this transformation from, America's sick care system to a true healthcare system, right? By empowering the patient. So that's, I think, a wonderful note to end on. So
yeah, we're not reactive; we're proactive.
Absolutely.
I mean, I like that as well. Like this technologies will improve screening. So a lot of diseases goes undiagnosed till like very severe symptoms. So it will improve the healthcare cost in that aspect. Your very late stage glaucoma or some other disease that you need to have surgery, it has a tremendous, cost system. So I think a lot of these technologies will help the screening, will help the, blindness or the death in certain diseases. It's amazing.
Correct. I think that's the future. Today, I still get a lot of patients who have insurance, who've worked for many years, who the first time I see them, they're already legally blind from glaucoma, which is heartbreaking because it's not like they did not have access to care, but they didn't feel it. Eye disease is not symptomatic most of the time, so they don't think about it.
Well, we want to really thank you so much, Dr. Al-Aswad, for joining us and taking the time to share with us your experiences and your kind of evolution throughout your whole career journey and how you work to assemble these expert teams of specialists in different arenas to, push the boundaries of what we know about healthcare, particularly with ophthalmology, and then incorporating AI into it. And then, of course, your wonderful work with the mobile clinics and telehealth. I think these are all great models for other disciplines, whether it's neurology, internal medicine, or others. So, thank you for all you're doing, and thank you for taking the time to be with us today.
And thank you for inviting me. This is an amazing forum, and imagine how the amount of people you can reach nationally and internationally with this. So, thank you.
Yeah.
Take care.
Participating.
Thank you. Okay, bye.